Welcome to Seattle Atheist Church. Atheist, agnostic, skeptic, whatever you like to call yourself, you are welcome here. At Seattle Atheist Church, we call ourselves an atheist church because you will never hear anything supernatural promoted from the podium. This is our creed. Seattle Atheist Church was founded on the principles of scientific naturalism and secular ethics. Truth claims are attempted here, and we stand ready to revise our thinking in light of new information. We attempt to be excellent to all conscious beings, and we believe in good because good works in non-mysterious ways. If that sounds good to you, then you're probably in the right place. A couple announcements before we start. In a couple of weeks, we will have our first Friday of the month movie night. Please sign up for that online. Spaces are limited. We also have board games a couple times a month. And we have secular social, I think it's the third Saturday of the month. Meetup isn't showing all of these events at one time anymore, but what you can do is you can go to seattleatheist.church and see all the events that we have on the calendar coming up, if you like to put them like in a planner or something like that. So the way that we pay for our room is through donations. There's a donation jar at the back of the room, and Troy can always swipe a card, or you can give a donation at Meetup. All of the donations are only used for renting this room. So other things that you might see are generally given as like other donations, so the signs and things like that. So just so you know where your money's going, it's always going to rent this room. And if you like doing this, please make a donation. Okay, talks are given by our members, and afterwards we'll have a short discussion. Ryan, please come on up.
Hello everyone, I'm doing my talk today on this book. It's called Homo Deus, whatever you want to call it, Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. This is the sequel to his first book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humanity. They're both amazing, I recommend them highly. The author being Yuval Noah Harari, and everything that I'm about to give you is basically summarized from the book. So the majority of it not being I'm not trying to take credit for any of it. So I wanted to have a talk about humanism and what that looks like. Why is that the value structure for secular people in essence? And this book goes through the history of how that came about, goes through what it is, and then goes through some of the flaws with it and where we might be going next. So first I wanted to start by defining humanism. A quick Google search will yield: humanism is an outlook or system of thought attaching prime importance to human rather than divine or supernatural matters. Humanist beliefs stress the potential value and goodness of human beings, emphasize common human needs, and seek solely rational ways of solving human problems. So this book is broken down in 3 parts. I'm going to very, very briefly go over the first part, and the first part being Homo sapiens conquers the world. And this is just for context. We used to be focused on defeating wars, famine, and disease. We're making great strides towards that, and now humanity's new agenda will be pursue a cure for aging and find the key to happiness. One thing I wanted to mention is that Yuval tends to, it classifies humanism as a religion. It's an ideology equivalent to religion in his eyes. And then he mentions how the modern deal renounces our belief in a great cosmic plan and replaces it with putting meaning into what humans do. It's kind of a perspective shift. So, skipping over most of the history, so the modern history is a deal between science and the religion of humanism. And he predicts that this may well crumble and give way to a new post-humanist religion. So the human religion worships humanity and expects humanity to play part of God, the part that God played in Christianity and Islam, and the laws that the laws of nature played in Buddhism and Taoism. According to humanism, humans must draw from within their inner experiences not only the meaning of their own lives, but also the meaning of the entire universe. This is the primary commandment humanism gives us: create meaning for a meaningless world. Humanism says that something can be bad only if it causes somebody to feel bad. Murder is wrong not because a God says so, but because it causes terrible suffering to the victim and the family and the friends. Some examples of humanism as we know it today is that the voter knows best, the customer is always right, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, if it feels good, do it, and for humanist education, think for yourself. When Nietzsche declared that God is dead, he meant that God has become an abstract idea that some accept and others reject. In the Middle Ages, without a God, I had no source of political, moral, or aesthetic authority. Could not tell what was right, good, or beautiful. Now, I pay no price for my disbelief. And the old knowledge structure equation used to be knowledge equals scripture times logic. Now, it's become knowledge is equal to empirical data times mathematics. In addition to this, humanism creates a way to get ethical knowledge. Knowledge is now equal to experiences times sensitivity. An experience in that equation is a subjective phenomenon made up of sensations, emotions, and thoughts. Sensitivity, being the other part of that equation, is paying attention to my experiences and allowing them to influence me. And he goes on to point out that our moral sensitivity sharpens over time and becomes a source of valuable ethical knowledge about what is good, what is right, and who I really am. Humanism sees life as a gradual process of interchange. Aim of existence is the distillation of knowledge to the widest possible experience of life into wisdom. So humanism is not a single coherent worldview, though. There is actual multiple branches of it. It has spread and evolved into several conflicting sects. They all believe that human experience is the supreme source of authority and meaning, yet they interpret human experience in different ways. So the three main branches, starting with liberal humanism or liberalism, claims that each human is unique and each individual should have as much possible freedom and express their inner truth. The other branches would say that this is flawed. They would say human experience is an individual phenomenon, but there are many individuals and they contradict each other. They have contradictory desires. He goes on to give a few examples, but in the interest of time, socialist humanism, which is the second one, socialists focus on what other people experience rather than our own feelings. Socialism dictates that instead of spending time self-reflecting, we should focus on the bigger picture. Only by understanding the prevailing socio-economic system and taking into account the experiences of all other people can I truly understand what I feel. They consider this to be flawed because how can we possibly take into account the experience of all human beings and weigh them against each other in a fair way? Socialists discourage self-exploration and advocate for the establishment of strong collective institutions. In liberal politics, the voter knows best. In socialism, the party knows best. And then the last and final branch, evolutionary humanism. It has a different solution to the problem of conflicting human experiences. Rooted in Darwinian evolution theory, it insists that conflict is something to be applauded rather than lamented. Conflict is the raw material of natural selection which pushes evolution forward. Some humans are superior to others. When experiences collide, the fittest human should always steamroll everyone else, or allows natural selection free reign. Of course, not the popular opinion. So he goes on to say, starts getting into the history, liberalism has merged originally with milder versions of nationalism to protect the unique experience of each human community. Evolutionary humanists such as Hitler identified particular nations as engines of human progress and concluded that these nations ought to bludgeon anyone standing in their way. It should be remembered, though, that they represent only one extreme version of evolutionary humanism. Just as Stalin's gulags do not automatically nullify every socialist idea and argument, so too the horrors of Nazism should not blind us to whatever insights evolutionary humanism might offer. Nazism was born from the pairing of evolutionary humanism with particular racial theories and ultra-nationalistic emotions. Not all evolutionary humanists are racist, and not every belief in humankind's potential for future evolution necessarily calls for setting up police states. Briefly on the history, From 1914 to 1989, a murderous war of religion raged between the three humanist sects. Liberalism at first was defeated again and again. Communist and fascist regimes took over multiple countries, and core liberal ideas were exposed as naive at best. Just give freedom to individuals and the world will enjoy peace and prosperity? Yeah, right. So skipping a ton of history again, he concludes that liberal democracy was saved only by nuclear weapons. Mutually assured destruction gave it the safety that it needed to thrive. So again, kind of skipping over most of that, as of 2016, there is no serious alternative to the liberal package of individualism, human rights, democracy, and a free market. The socialist movements such as Occupy Wall Street have nothing against these principles. Rather, they take governments to task for not living up to these ideals. So that's kind of the history and kind of defining what it is. Now he moves into what the potential flaws are with this philosophy. So 21st century science is undermining the foundations of liberal order. Because science doesn't deal with questions of value, it cannot determine whether liberals are right in valuing liberty more than equality or in valuing the individual more than the collective. However, like every other religion, liberalism too is based not only on abstract ethical judgments, but also on what it believes to be factual statements. And these factual statements don't stand up to rigorous scientific scrutiny. So the first thing that he wants to explain that is not true. He wants to say that free will is an illusion. Liberals value individual liberty so much because they believe that humans have free will. People are, of course, influenced by external forces and chance events. But at the end of the day, each of us can wave the magic wand of freedom and decide things for ourselves. This is the real reason liberalism gives so much importance to voters and customers and instructs us to follow our heart and do what feels good. It is the free will that imbues the universe with meaning. To the best of our scientific understanding, determinism and randomness have divided the entire cake between them, not leaving even a crumb for freedom. The sacred word freedom turns out to be just like the soul, a hollow term empty of any discernible meaning. These are not just hypotheses or philosophical speculations. Today we can use brain scanners to predict people's desires and decisions well before they are aware of them. It may sound complicated but easy to test. Next time a thought pops into your mind, stop and ask yourself, why did I think this particular thought? Did I decide a minute ago to think this thought and only then think it? Or did it just arise without any permission from me? If I'm indeed the master of my thoughts, can I decide not to think about anything? And then he goes on to explain how they can hook up a rat running in a maze and basically tell it where to go. And it's not painful for the rat, it's just the rat thinks that's what it wants to do. The next thing that he wants to dispel is that the self is an illusion. Science undermines not only the liberal belief in free will, but also the belief in individualism. Liberals believe that we have a single indivisible self. For liberalism to make sense, it must have only one and only one true self. For if I had more than one authentic voice, how would I know which voice to heed in the polling station or in the marriage market? The single self doesn't exist. When I look deep in myself, the seeming unity that we take for granted dissolves into a cacophony of conflicting voices, none of which is my true self. Humans are not individuals, they are dividuals. And then, of course, the infamous split brain experiment, where it goes and explains that you can, when you separate someone's two hemispheres, they basically turn into two separate consciousnesses. And if you cover each eye, which each brain can see, they have different explanations for different things, which is very interesting. But in the interest of time, I want to move on. He goes on to explain how there's an experiencing self and a narrating self. He says there are at least two different selves within us, the experiencing self and the narrating self. The experiencing self is our moment-to-moment consciousness. It remembers nothing. The narrating self tells stories and makes major decisions. He uses this in an example of a cold water experiment and explains the peak-end effect, essentially that the end, say the pain that you would experience over a long duration versus the experience you have at the very end. You would more likely remember the very end of the pain. So if it is very mild at the end, then it won't have as much of an effect when you think back to it. So what is the meaning to life then? Liberalism maintains that each individual should use his free will to create meaning. The life sciences undermine liberalism, arguing that momentary experiences don't add up to any enduring essence. Humans are the masters of cognitive dissonance, only allowing ourselves to believe one thing in the lab and another in law. Once the heretical scientific insights are translated into everyday technology, routine activities, and economic structures, it will be increasingly difficult to sustain this double game and will probably require a brand new package of religious beliefs and political institutions. Liberalism is threatened not by the philosophical idea that there are no free individuals, but rather by concrete technologies. We are about to face a flood of extremely useful devices, tools, and structures that make no allowance for the free will of individual humans. Practical implications of these discoveries are: 1, humans will lose their economic and military usefulness. Hence, the economic and political system will stop attaching much value to them. This is hinting at automation. The system will continue to find value in humans collectively, but not as individuals. And number 3, the system will still find value in some unique individuals, but these will constitute a new elite of upgraded superhumans. And so, one important concept that he mentions on the way: what is more important, intelligence or consciousness? And the punchline here, in the interest of time, is that intelligence is mandatory, but consciousness is optional for achieving what we want. So, essentially, regarding automation in the past, the next subject that he covers is that humans have physical and cognitive abilities. And in the past, we've always been able to move to cognitive abilities, which the machines haven't been able to touch. The Industrial Revolution, when we went away from farming. The idea that humans will always have a unique ability beyond the reach of non-conscious algorithms is just wishful thinking. He considers organisms to be algorithms, essentially, when you break it down. Every animal, including Homo sapiens, is an assemblage of organic algorithms shaped by natural selection over millions of years of evolution. And then 2, with regards to with the automation, algorithmic calculations are not affected by the materials from which the calculator is built. He's essentially saying that a machine could eventually become just as useful of a calculator of algorithms. Hence, there's no reason to think that the organic algorithms can do things that non-organic algorithms will never be able to replicate or surpass. What people do. Art is often said to provide us with our ultimate and uniquely human sanctuary. Non-organic algorithms can create art as well. Let's see. There's a small passage in here I want to read. So, the liberal belief in individualism is founded on the 3 important assumptions that we discussed. I am an individual, that is, I have a single essence that cannot be divided into single parts. This is what liberalism assumes. True, this inner core is wrapped into many outer layers, but if I make the effort to peel away these external crusts, I will find deep within myself a clear, single inner voice, which is my authentic self. 2, my authentic self is completely free. And 3, it follows from the first 2 assumptions that I can know things about myself that nobody else can discover. For only I have access to my inner space of freedom, and only I can hear the whispers of my authentic self. This is why liberalism grants the individual so much authority. I cannot trust anyone else to make choices for me, because no one else can know who I really am, how I feel, and what I want. This is why the voter knows best, why the customer is always right, and why beauty is in the eye of the beholder. However, the life sciences challenges all 3 assumptions. According to them, number 1, organisms are algorithms, and humans are not individuals, they are dividuals. That is, humans are an assemblage of many different algorithms lacking a single inner voice or a single self. 2, the algorithms constituting a human are not free. They are shaped by genes and environmental pressures and take decisions either deterministically or randomly, but not freely. And 3, it follows that an external algorithm could theoretically know me much better than I could ever know myself. An algorithm that monitors each of these systems that compromise my body, my brain, could know exactly who I am, how I feel, and what I want. Once developed, such an algorithm could replace the voter, the customer, and the beholder. Then algorithm will know best, the algorithm will always be right, and the beauty will be in the calculation of the algorithm. So essentially it's saying algorithms will know us better than we do ourselves. All right. So democratic elections will become obsolete because Google will be able to represent even my own political opinions better than I can. When I stand behind the curtain at the polling booth, liberalism instructs me to consult my authentic self and choose whatever party or candidate reflects my deepest desires. Yet the life sciences points out that I don't remember everything I felt and thought in the years since the last election. Moreover, I am bombarded by a barrage of propaganda and spin which distort my choices. It's kind of the peak end rule all over again. Our narrating self forgets the vast majority of events and remembers only a few extreme incidents and gives a wholly disproportionate weight to recent happenings. Essentially, authorize Google to vote for me, and it gets it right more often than not. Kind of an odd concept. When algorithms go from oracles to agents to sovereigns, this is a key concept he wants to get across. So, real quick, when Waze, let's say the navigation app, GPS app Waze, diverts you from heavy traffic, currently it lets you decide which way you want to go. In the future, you might be able to let it take the fastest or you might instruct it to take the most scenic route home. Maybe it's like self-driving cars. Next, if it was to recommend a shorter route home, but everyone took it, it would get clogged. But if it was smart and only told half the drivers to take the shortcut, it would be fine. Hence, it would gain the ability to make that determination and become sovereign. So then he wants to use all of that, which I just, all these concepts, and say the threats to liberalism, summarized again. Humans will lose their value. 2, humans will be valuable collectively, but lose their individual authority and instead be managed by external algorithms, similar to the Waze idea. The system will still need you to teach history or write code, but it will know you better than you know yourself, and will therefore make most of the important decisions for you, and you will be perfectly happy with that. It won't be a bad world, but it will be a post-liberal world. And then number 3, I got a little lost in that one. Some people will remain both indispensable and undecipherable, but they will constitute a small privileged elite of upgraded humans. And he goes on to say that if you split humankind into a biological caste, splitting humankind into a biological caste will destroy the foundations of liberal ideology. Liberalism can coexist with socioeconomic gaps, since it favors liberty over equality. It takes such gaps for granted. However, liberalism still presupposes that all human beings have equal value and authority. From a liberal perspective, it is perfectly okay that one person is a billionaire whereas another is a poor peasant. The usual reply in defense of this is that many medical breakthroughs, for example, began with the rich, but eventually benefited the entire population and helped to narrow rather than widen the social gaps. Vaccines is a good example because originally only the rich could afford it, now it benefits us all. The expectation that this process will be repeated may be wishful thinking, though. First, medicine is undergoing a conceptual revolution, from healing the sick to upgrading the healthy. This is an elitist project because it rejects the idea of a universal standard application, universal standard applicable to all, and seeks to give some individuals an edge over others. The poor in 2070 could have better health care, but the gap separating them from the rich will be much greater, and that gap matters. People care that even though they're better off than they are now, they look at the billionaires and they go, oh, well, I want to be closer to what they are. So, and this is the last section that I wanted to go through, is that he now is going, well, those are the flaws, where are we headed? So the new religions, techno-humanism being one, and their creed is we should create Homo Deus, and upgrade our Deus, and upgrade humanity. They want to not listen to our inner voices, but rather they want to control them. They want to choose their own desires and modify that. Listen to yourself is no longer self-evident. As we turn to our inner voice, as we turn our inner voice up and down, maybe with drugs and various things that we can balance our biochemistry in the brain, we give up our belief in authenticity because it is no longer clear whose hand is on the switch. There's one more passage here. So, humanist dramas unfold when people have uncomfortable desires. For example, it is extremely uncomfortable when Romeo of the House Montague falls in love with Juliet of the House Capulet, because the Montagues and Capulets are bitter enemies. The technological solution to such dramas is to ensure that we never have uncomfortable desires. How much pain and sorrow would have been avoided if, instead of drinking poison, Romeo and Juliet could just take a pill or wear a helmet that would have redirected their star-crossed love towards other people? Techno-humanism faces an impossible dilemma here. It considers the human will be the most important thing in the universe, hence it pushes humankind to develop technologies that can control and redesign the will. After all, it's tempting to gain control over the most important thing in the world. Yet, should we ever receive such control, techno-humanism would not know what to do with it, because the sacred human would then just become another designer project. We can never deal with such technologies as long as we believe that the human will and the human experience are the supreme source of authority and meaning. So essentially, there's going to be some problems with that. And so it quickly transitions to another potential candidate for the new religion that we might prescribe to, and that's data religion. It worships not gods or man, because we've evolved there, but data. It declares that the universe consists of data flows, and the value of any phenomenon or entity is determined by its contribution to data processing. Dataism is neither liberal nor humanist. It isn't anti-humanist either. It just doesn't think human experiences are intrinsically valuable. By equating the human experience with data patterns, dataism undermines our primary source of authority and meaning. So in the days of Locke, Hume and Voltaire humanists argued that God is a product of human imagination. Dataism now gives humanists a taste of their own medicine and tells them, yes, God is a product of their imagination, of human imagination, but human imagination in turn is just the product of biochemical algorithms. In the 18th century, humanism sidelined God by shifting from a deocentric to a homocentric worldview. In the 21st century, dataism may sideline humans by shifting from a homocentric to a data-centric view. So in the 21st century, feelings are no longer the best algorithms in the world. We're developing superior algorithms that utilize the unprecedented computing power in giant databases. Google and Facebook algorithms not only know exactly how you feel, they also know a myriad of other things about you that you hardly suspect. Consequently, you should stop listening to your feelings and start listening to these external algorithms instead. What's the point of having democratic elections when the algorithms know not only how each person is going to vote, but also the underlying neurological reasons? Why one person votes Democrat while another votes Republican? Whereas humanism commanded listen to your feelings, dataism now commands listen to the algorithms. They know how you feel. So obviously there's skeptics to this new ideology, and they would ask, can we really reduce life to data flows? It's a good question. Another one, is life really only decision making? Which is what the algorithms help do. There's probably more to life than just optimizing and making things more efficient and solving everyone's problems. So the last and final thing I want to read for you today is the summary that he goes through. So he sums everything up. Number one, science is converging on an all-encompassing dogma which says that organisms are algorithms and life is data processing. 2, intelligence is decoupling from consciousness. And 3, non-conscious but highly intelligent algorithms may soon know us better than we know ourselves. These three processes raise three key questions, which I hope will stick in your mind. One, are organisms really just algorithms? And is life really just data processing? 2, what's more valuable, intelligence or consciousness? And 3, what will happen to society, politics, and daily life when non-conscious but highly intelligent algorithms know us better than we know ourselves? And that is all.